Hello, thanks for joining me today. If you're new here, my name's Liv, and today's class is all about downward dog. This is a really challenging posture, especially if we're new to yoga. So this video is all about giving you some tips and tricks and a few variations that you can try to help make downward dog a little bit easier. And when you're ready, we'll get started. So we're actually going to start this one standing up. So jump to your feet if you're not there already. Bring your feet a little bit wider than hip width apart, and then we're going to bend the knees, just resting the hands on the thighs. And then we're going to take a cat-cow action through the spine. So reaching the chest up, tailbone away, finding this extension through the spine, the cow pose. And then rounding through the spine, dropping chin towards chest, tucking the tailbone under. And then maybe moving with the breath, inhaling to extend the spine, lift the chest. Exhale, rounding. Just take a couple more at your own pace. Good, and then we'll meet back in this spinal extension, so where the tailbone is reaching away, chest is lifted. And this is really the kind of spine that we're looking for when we're in downward dog. It might feel quite exaggerated in this pose because we've got the knees bent a lot, but we're looking for this spinal extension, reaching the tailbone away, almost like you're trying to create a ski slope with your back. Good, and then from here, if you want to, you can start to straighten the legs out a little bit, but don't worry too much if they don't go much straighter. You might feel quite a deep stretch through the backs of the legs. And then essentially here, we're in our downward dog position. You can imagine if my arms were extended and my hands were on the floor, I would be in downward dog. So this is really what we're looking for through the spine. So just feeling what this is feeling like, exaggerating that reaching away of the tailbone, trying to keep the chest lifted. Good, and then we're going to drop down to the floor and see if we can recreate that in our downward dog position. So bringing the hands about shoulder width apart. Usually, index finger wants to be facing forwards, but you can rotate your hand as much as you want to, inwards and outwards, to feel what feels best through your shoulders. And then tucking the toes, lifting the hips high, and we're going to try and recreate that long spine. So bending the knees quite generously and reaching the tailbone up towards the sky. Good, and then you can stay here or you can start to straighten the legs. But don't worry too much about how straight the legs are, how close the heels are to the ground. We're focusing on finding the length through the spine, and then the legs will get more flexible. The heels might come to the ground eventually, but I've been doing yoga for years, and 99% of the time, my heels don't touch the floor. So really don't worry about it too much. One last breath here, really trying to hold that long spine. And then we can drop the knees back down, just coming to sit. Good, so that's step one, finding that long spine around the hips and the tailbone. But then you might find that you're in your downward dog, you've got this long spine at the base of the spine, but you might feel quite rounded through the shoulders still. And that might just be because you've got quite tight shoulders, and it can feel like a lot trying to bring your chest down to the ground. So the next thing we're going to look at is how we can go from a rounded upper back to dropping the chest towards the floor. So for this, we're going to come to a wall. So if you've got a wall close by, just come so you can bring your hands to it. You can also do this kind of with the chair if you want to, by bringing your hands to the chair. But we're going to recreate this downward dog shape again. So bringing the hands to the wall, stepping the feet back just enough so you can start to sink into the shoulders. And then taking a few breaths here, Maybe bending the knees, trying to find that length through the spine, reaching the tailbone away. And here, eventually we're looking to get the ears in between the upper arms, in between the biceps. So at the moment, you might be starting with this quite rounded upper back. It might feel quite tight through the shoulders, but slowly, slowly we can work to loosen up, allowing the chest to drop down and ears to come between the upper arms. So taking a few more breaths here. Seeing if you can ease into the shoulders, finding places to soften. Good, and then releasing out of that one. So if you find that you do have quite tight shoulders, that's a great way to gently ease the shoulders out a little bit, because you don't have your body weight on your hands, and it means that you're giving your shoulders a chance to relax before putting the weight and trying to get them to be strong in your downward dog. And then the next little bit we're going to look at is our wrists. So this is a big one for people. When we start doing yoga, we are spending quite a lot of time on our wrists, especially in like all fours position, downward dog, planks. And it's not something that we're doing in our everyday lives. So it can feel painful, it can feel uncomfortable, and we can find that our wrists get really tired really quickly. So I'm going to show you a couple of little exercises we can do to try and strengthen the wrists and make downward dog a little bit easier. So we're going to bring our hands out in front of us. You can be seated or kneeling like I am, or you can do this at a table or with a chair, just with your hands resting on a surface, trying to recreate this kind of slope through the arms that we have in downward dog. And then usually what happens is when we've got our body weight on our wrists, we dump our weight into this heel of the hand. But what we're going to try and do is shift some of that weight forwards through the hand. So we're going to start by pressing into the knuckles, these 4 knuckle joints here, pressing them into the ground. And just notice what happens through the hands as you do this. Just do it a few times, pressing the knuckles in and then releasing. And hopefully you're noticing that the heel of the hand lifts away just a little bit. The skin is still touching the floor, but it just eases some of the pressure in that area. And then we're going to extend this a little bit more. So pressing into the knuckles and then pressing into the tips of the fingers. Almost as if you're trying to pull the fingertips back towards you. And again, just play with this a little bit. So pressing the knuckles and the fingertips into the ground and then release. Just doing it a few more times. Noticing what's happening through the hand, the wrist, the forearms. And then you can release. You might feel that your forearms were getting a little bit tired. You might have felt kind of some strain down here. So let's relax the wrists a little bit, bring the heels of the hands together, and then rolling the hands around. So that's a great little exercise just for strengthening the wrists and trying to shift our weight through our hands. Good, and you can stay with this action for as long as you want to. But otherwise, we're going to try and come back into our downward dog, finding all of those points that we've worked on so far, and then adding in this little hand movement. So when you're ready, tucking the toes, lifting the hips, bending the knees to find that length through the tailbone, working at dropping the chest down towards the floor, maybe straightening the knees a little bit if you want to, and then focusing on the hands, trying to bring the weight forwards through the hands a little bit, pressing into the knuckles, pressing into the fingertips. And just notice what that feels like in your downward dog. And then one last breath, and then we'll drop the knees down, take a break. Good. You can roll out through the wrists again if you want to. Take some circles with the shoulders. Good. So those are the main points for a full downward dog. But if you're in kind of a flowing class and you just really don't feel like doing a downward dog, maybe you're tired, maybe your wrists are hurting, maybe your shoulders are aching, whatever the reason is, if you just want to do something else but keep joining in with the class, I'm going to give you a few variations you can try. So the first one is puppy posture. So you might have done this one before, but we're going to keep the knees on the ground about hip width apart and then start to walk the hands forwards, dropping the chest down, and you can either rest the forehead on the ground or look up in between the hands. This is a great one because you can focus on finding that length through the spine, reaching the tailbone up towards the sky, while working on your shoulder flexibility, dropping the chest down towards the floor. And you can work on that hand positioning, pressing into the knuckles and the fingertips by keeping these arms active, elbows lifted off the ground. Might feel a little bit more comfortable because you've not got your body weight pressing down into the hands. Good. And then you can adapt this one even further. If you've got blocks, you can bring one block underneath each hand and then start to drop the chest down again. This is great for working on your shoulder flexibility because it allows you to drop down even deeper. Or you can use your blocks in your downward dog position. So tucking the toes, lifting the hips up, coming to kind of this more full version of downward dog. Resting your hands on the blocks. And this is a great one for shifting some of your weight back into the legs. So particularly good if your wrists are kind of the issue in downward dog, or if you want a little less pressure through the shoulders. So you can try that one as well. And then the last one is one we had earlier where you're coming up to the wall, hands on the wall, and then finding this length through the spine. Knees can be bent here and then working towards becoming straight. A little less convenient if you're in a flowing class, but great if you're practicing at home or if you happen to be next to a wall if you're in an in-person class. So I'm going to leave it there, but I hope that you found this class useful and that you were able to learn a bit more about what's going on in downward dog and some things you can do to make it a little bit easier. So let me know in the comments how you got on, and if you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and of course please subscribe to my channel if you've been enjoying my videos. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.